Do you feel, this may be a simple question, I don't know. Personally, and based on the fact that you're native Hawaiian, this will be relevant to native Hawaiian culture, in my view. Do you think the separation of church and state is an important part of the society you live in? So not the question of whether or not it's Western, or it's Hawaiian, or it's indigenous, or it's Asian. Do you believe in the separation of church and state to the extent that a religious belief of one individual or a group of individuals should not trump other people's beliefs or uses outside of the legal process? We're waiting on you, Jim. No, you're going last. Stop it. Heather?
I thought you said I'm going last.
No, I didn't say you were going last. You're going first. Jim's going last. He likes having the last word anyway. And I know what Jim's answer is going to be. Take your time. I like the dramatic effect.
Well, I kind of forgot the question again.
Do you think this?
You talk so much.
Sorry,
Like,
I get that a lot. Do you agree that the separation of church and state is important?
Or how do I value that in my own society, essentially? I think we tend to tell ourselves that that's how our United States government is supposed to be, right? Like, it's designed to be that way, but we have implicit biases that sometimes are totally unconscious, right? How do you, as a person, separate your religious systems from your actions? And so, of course, that's going to fold into the state at the end of the day. But I think, limiting that religious influence over state policy, I think, is definitely ideal. Again, I think it's totally hard to separate the two because it's like separating your arm from your body and saying that they shouldn't go together. But yeah.
For me personally, it's interesting. Yeah, I wouldn't say I have a simple binary yes or no, or yay or nay to it, because, well, obviously, if you look in history, when a government is ruled solely by religion, some would say the results were not always positive for certain people's lives.
Wow, sugarcoat.
Yeah. There was not really a solidified form of structure. It was kind of it was almost like a glorified, covered up view of like a dictatorship or an oligarchy. So there's that aspect, right? Again, it's kind of like a continuum. But at the same time, I would say the notion of like spirituality and that extension of our physical body, I think it's important to have as human beings. Now, whether or not that should come into legal action and decision making, well, I think that's where it gets messy, right? Because I feel like we're going to a bit of a philosophical thing, but law itself is a development of human beings as well, just as our interpretation of reality, i.e. spirituality, religion. So how they mix, I think there can be a cohesive way for them to exist, but I also see if there's not the proper foregrounds or insurances, that there can be ways that it can spiral out, and we've seen that in history, right? I'm just basing this off of historical arguments. I would like to see that happen. I think in some ways our society right now is kind of like that, right? Churches have like some special privileges over certain lands, the churches, right? That kind of thing. But it's not to the extent where no one can be on this land. Like there's limitations again. So that's why I would say I think they can exist, personally. I think they cohesively can exist with range of push and pull between the two. That's just me, though. So we'll see how this goes.
So, in addressing this question, I say that we need to think of the objectives of state versus religious or spiritual aspects. The idea of the law is to ensure the safety of everyone, that we can all get along. It prevents us from delving into chaos and anarchy. But the religious and spiritual side of things is extremely personal to each and every single person. So I don't think that either of those two should infringe on each other, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I don't think either of them should infringe on each other in such a way that one is trying to take the other's place. I think they're two completely separate states. They have different objectives, and that's why they are incomparable.
May I just, so what do we do in this situation then? When there's, a group of people who, a certain place is sacred, and it's so sacred that it should be left undisturbed by buildings and people. Should the law allow people to, keep it public, and in which case it is trampling on these people's belief, or should we say, okay, we respect these people's beliefs, and we're going to enforce it with the law by keeping people off of it?
Jim?
That's why we had 11 years of hearings. And what's particularly relevant for this discussion is that the TMT site and its vicinity were not used for traditional or customary Native Hawaiian practices. They were conducted elsewhere on Mauna Kea. And that's, depositing the piko, quarrying rock for the ko'i, collecting water from Lake Waiau. That site is, for the TMT, is not on the Summit Ridge, which is generally considered the quote-unquote most sacred area. But Sam's question was different. This one is relatively straightforward in the law. There's a separation between church and state because you have a right to your beliefs. But those beliefs cannot be imposed on others. Every government that is based upon a religion ends up like the Taliban, where those views and no other views are permitted, and they will explode 1,000-year-old Buddhas because it's inconsistent with their personal religious beliefs. So in the United States, which was founded by people who wanted to escape governments that were ruled by religious divine monarchs in Europe, was to then make it real clear that you can believe, and we will actually encourage you to have your churches, but that's separate from governance and law. So where you answer these questions is in the courts, and that's what the permit process was. And so all of these questions that Sam has been bringing up were addressed over the past 11 years. These are not open questions. So one of the distractions is the argument that the Kiai have that there are still these questions. I'm sort of reminded of some of the shenanigans going on in Washington, D.C. right now. When I hear, yes, we just have more questions about this, that, or the other nonsense. These are not unanswered questions. Everyone we've talked about today has been addressed. All you'd have to do is read Mauna Kea 2. Which is available. You probably have it on your site.
I've most likely posted it on the site. What is the actual? This is the Supreme Court case he's referring to. What's the actual name? Because I think it's something funky. Because it's lawyers.
I don't know.
It's
I know it by Mauna
I think
Kea.
it's something in Land Conservation District Use Permit nonsense. But if you do want a copy of it, actually email imuatmt@gmail.com. imuatmt@gmail.com. I will send you a copy or a link. And it does explain exactly all of what Jim just said. I mean, it explains in detail that there are no cultural sites anywhere near the TMT site, or actually there's one, I think, like 100 feet away, but it's not going to be disturbed, and explains, and it even goes into the question of sovereignty and the question of whether or not Hawaii is part of this United States, and it covers that argument and moves on from it and says, yes, we've solved that issue. So it's actually very interesting read if you have 7 hours. Might not take that long, but...
Okay, so I do have a question. This is a question that I've actually been given a lot. And it's kind of like a lot of people feel like, given the 11-year process, et cetera, that they still don't agree with it and it was wrong. How, if someone in this room right now just came to you and said, like, all those 11-year stuff was wrong. It wasn't done right. How would you respond to that?
Well, first let me say how that's framed. For people who deny their own arguments over the past 11 years throughout the permitting process and the appellate process, ultimately what they resort to is insults. The most, well, the ones I can say publicly are coconut and donkey. Yeah. So when you are resorting to insult, you have run out of argument. there's something called Hitchens razor. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's sort of like Occam's razor. Occam's razor, the simplest answer is usually the most correct. Hitchens razor, Chris Hitchens was a writer. His proposition was, if you make a statement or you take a position, you also have the duty to support it. So it's not my job to figure out why they say heva. It's not my job to figure out why that was raised and then disposed of and why they can still raise it again and say heva. Heva means wrong if you don't speak Hawaiian. It is the obligation of the person submitting the proposal to justify it in some way that has not yet been exhausted. We will kill ourselves trying to chase this forever. That's the trap. So from a legal standpoint, it's very simple. You're entitled to your beliefs, but those beliefs cannot be imposed on others. If your position is based upon a personal religious belief, then it is personal by its nature. And religious is not legal. It is religious. And there's a realm for that, but not in the legal system.
We are at 4:02, so I want to respect everybody's time. I want to thank everybody for coming and sitting here. I want to give the panelists, one last thought it's always, if you need some place to address it, to like kids that may eventually watch this, or to SACNES, because I just love beating up on SACNES, because what were you guys thinking? But the fact that, or to the community, or to the, astronomers, or to the Kiai, or anybody, and just what are your final closing thoughts on this? Makana, we'll just come down the line.
I think, all in all, like I said earlier about the silver lining, I think that there is some good to this. I think it's brought awareness globally, right? But all in all, at the end of the day, for me personally, my view, and I think I came at this with an open mind. I think I went through the journey. I did some self-discovery, and I asked myself, is this right? And for me, I say it's still yes. I truly believe that this thing is going to help perpetuate our culture and who we are as Hawaiians, right? Not just the blood, but the mind and the heart too, yeah? So for me, I still think this is pono, and I think, us coming up here and doing this, and for those who can't come out openly and say it, we just want to say thank you for your silent support. I mean, no, honestly, for me, I've had people randomly message me, I don't even know who they are, saying, oh, thank you for coming out, because, I'm too afraid to come out, too scared, because my whole family all wearing the See on the Mauna shirt, and they have to wear it, but, they don't agree. So, stay strong, guys. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Makana. I would just like to say to everyone who's watching this, and hopefully future generations as well, the wine culture is going to always be changing. And many things we have embraced. I mean, look at fashion. I love, a lot of the Aloha shirts by Kealo Pico and Manaola. And we embrace this. They're not just making malo cloth or kies. They're making really nice Aloha shirts. And this is the same thing with hula, and the music. Right now we have an opportunity to revolutionize Hawaiian astronomy and allow the next generation of people from Hawaii to become leaders in the world in astronomy. And I think that's a great opportunity. And it's fine if you don't believe that that's, what is right, but you should always be respectful of other people's ideas and conduct yourself with aloha.
Thank you, Tyler. I guess a concluding thought that I have is kulia ikanu'u, which means to strive for the summit. And in this sense, it's quite literal. Personally, it is quite literal. But it
Motto was that?
Queen Kafi Olani. And so personally, as a modern Native Hawaiian, I will strive to do my best in this situation to see that whatever the outcome may be, that is what is best for our future. And I will continue to strive to be the best that I am in my field of astronomy so that I can prove that this is possible. We as Native Hawaiians can be the best in astronomy. Sorry.
I mean, I think you're entitled to some tears. I think you, more than anybody, as a high school student coming out and starting that petition and going through what you went through alone is what gave me strength to come out, because I was one of many people who had some reason to be silent. And I understand them. I mean, I was an attorney. I have attorney friends that support this that I'm constantly berating, and they're like, look, I can't speak out. And I was the same way. I was like, I have clients, I got to represent them and stuff. And you were a high school student. And you didn't deserve that. And I just thank you for what you've done.
It is a profile in courage to see young people on this panel living their lives in excellence, in a discipline that is as rigorous as any. I mean, fundamental questions are addressed by physics. For those of us who have a question in our mind of what to believe or who to believe or what path is either Pono or Heva, the book says, know them by what they do. Tyler is right. The fundamental base of our culture is aloha. And I am informed by Pilahi Paki's definition of aloha. She was a kupuna when I was younger and has informed many of us of my generation. And for Pilahi, aloha was akahai, which is kindness. Lokahi, our ability to work together. Olu olu is to be pleasant. Ha'a is humility, and ahunui is patience. Those fundamental Hawaiian values are what lives in each of us when we live aloha. For those strident voices out there, and you have any question as to their authenticity with our culture, ask yourself, are they kind? Are they working together? Are they pleasant? Are they humble? Are they patient? Those are the values that we live in our house. My daughter is a Olelo professor at UH, and she is on the mountain protesting. In our house, we have no animosity. I don't know if you can tell, but I have the utmost respect for anybody who feels a genuine, sincere belief that TMT is Heva and that they are compelled to protest. I completely respect that. And for her part, my daughter, who's 30 years old and still lives with me, also respects me and my point of view. And we never fight, we never have harsh words or raise our voices to each other. If what we are seeking here is that sort of accommodation, then I think we're on the right track. If we are not seeking that sort of accommodation, then we're on the wrong track and not living aloha.
I think talking about lokahi, and that was like one of the 4 that we were taught in Pahoa as na'ali'i. That is, when you said the last message, that's the thing that came to my mind was we are in this together, right? There's no us versus them. At the end of the day, these aren't invisible people. We have to talk with each other. We have to learn how to have these conversations. We have to respect each other's beliefs. And we may disagree. And I give you credit for not arguing. I've done a lot of arguing at home. But we come together, we find peace, we make resolution. If we don't stay together as a community, then we cannot move forward. And I think that's, for me, the most important thing out of this, is how do we respect each other? How do we move forward? How do we lift each other up? So, yeah.
I just want to say in closing, if, for people that find the sentiments expressed here to be persuasive, the best place I can suggest going is to Mailani's petition at gopetition.com. You search for Mailani Neal, we support TMT. It'll come up. Please sign it. If you signed it before, you won't be able to sign it again, but please sign it. We'll get your email. We'll contact you. We'll send out more information to the Kiai. If they're watching or if they're here, please, contact me at imuatmt@gmail.com, and we can organize another panel discussion, or please invite, me or us or anybody here. I can try and coordinate it. Please let me know. Otherwise, I just want to say mahalo to our panelists, and please give them a round of applause, and thank you all for coming too.